Hello, this is Jasmine from Minnie the Pug Journals, and today I thought I'd show you how I turned this paper bag into a journal. Here I'm showing you guys. This is gonna go really fast, so I'm sorry about that. Well, in some parts. So here I'm just showing you that I've already cut everything to size. This is one of the fabrics I'll be using for one of the journals, and I want to keep in mind that this is like a kind of almost like it almost has like panels. And okay, here I'm showing you how we don't want the words to be facing into the fabric. I want them to be facing like to the inner lining of the journal, because I will cover that with cardstock, so it will not be visible. And I want to ensure that. Here I'm showing you how I didn't cut my bag exactly to like exactly very straight. So these panels will really help me. These cardstock panels will really help me to make sure that my journal doesn't look super weird or wonky. Um, and I cut them very exact. And later on I will have to work around this because I didn't think it like 100% through when I cut them out. But yeah. And here I'm showing you how those the reason this fabric is so big is because I will be using those side panels um, to create pockets when I finish with this journal. The second journal that I will be creating will be with this white fabric and the same with a paper bag. Um, and right now I'm going to show you that because the fabric is white, I did end up, and because it's more sheer, I did end up deciding to use batting. It's not like a super thick batting, but it is batting nonetheless, and it'll help to ensure that the brown from the paper bag will not be super visible, and to kind of give it an even tone throughout. um I'm so sorry, guys, if my voice sounds weird. It's because I've done this voiceover like 3 times. It's my first time doing a voiceover, and I've had a lot of things go wrong. So yes, and so here I'm just gonna glue the batting down to this paper bag. Um, and I'm not super worried about the glue having like complete coverage because I will be sewing around this. If you saw these journals, I decided to make a video kind of explaining how I made them, because if you guys saw my autumn junk journal swap flip through for the Casa Azul Junk Journal Facebook group. If you saw that video of mine, you probably saw how that journal had a whole bunch of like stitching throughout the entire cover, and it was like not intentionally messy, like all over the cover stitching. I just went a little crazy with my sewing machine, and I really liked how that looked. So I thought I would show you guys. In that for that particular journal, I did not use batting. But it was because that fabric was not like a very thin cottony fabric. It was, I'm not sure what that fabric is made of, but it was very like stiff. And I guess if I had to compare the fabric I'm using for these journals and the fabric I use for the autumn journal, it would be like a comparison between like a good quality printer paper and maybe like a 60-pound cardstock um, paper. So there was a difference, and I didn't feel the need to add batting because, like I said, that fabric was thicker. It was more stiffer. It wasn't sheer. Um, and I felt like it would work well with just the paper bag, and it did. Um, because the inner lining was also cardstock, so it gave it more stability as well. It was still soft covered, you know, but I didn't feel like it needed that additional stiffness from batting. Whereas these, because the fabric is a lot more thin, I felt like they did. Um, so here you'll just see me gluing down the batting, and so like I said, I'm not super worried about everything being adhered like 100% because I just want it adhered enough where I can do my crazy stitching around the entire journal cover. Adding, texture and dimension to my covers. I really liked that. Um, and here you will notice that my batting is not cut to size. This could happen for a lot of reasons. I believe that when I traced my piece of paper bag on my batting to cut it out, I might have traced it with the letters down instead of up. So facing towards the batting instead of facing away from the batting. So that gave me like a wonky, uneven, not maybe slightly bigger piece of batting. And then you will see me cut that off right now because I don't want it to interfere with when I add when I what's it called? Sorry words. Like I said, I've done this voiceover twice already. This is my third time. When I wrap the excess fabric over the inside of the journal. So I'm just cutting that excess off and trying to make everything as even as possible. Um, yeah. So yes. And then you'll see me right now glue down the fabric to the batting. So I do want to let you guys know that all of the this fabric that I'm using for these journals I got from my friend Madeline Diet from Madeline Diet Designs. She well, I guess her last name isn't Diet, but I'm so sorry. But it's for Madeline Diet Designs. She was kind enough that when I reached out, because I had very limited Christmas supplies, she was kind enough to agree to create a box to ship to me. Of course, I paid for it, right? But she was kind enough to look through her stash and create this really great box of Christmas goodies for me for journaling. I haven't been feeling my best self these days. So that box really did provide me a lot of inspiration, and she sent me a bunch of really cool stuff. So yes, these fabrics included, and I really liked them. Here I'm just deciding how I'm going to go about this and showing you guys once again. I did glue down my fabric. Oh, there my fabric slipped. That table is really slippery. So, I did glue down my fabric onto my piece of paper in sections. If you are not going to sew, then I definitely suggest that you go in sections and that you make sure everything is adhered very, very well. Here my brush had been in like water to kind of make sure it didn't get all stiff from all the glue, right? So that helped make the glue a little bit more spreadable, but it also thinned it out. And you also have to remember that batting will absorb glue. So you also want to keep that in mind when you are adding your glue to your batting. There I'm just making sure that there's no glue because since I will be using pockets, the sides of this fabric for pockets, I want to make sure I line my paper bag piece exactly where I want it. And then I flip it over and keep gluing. But as I was saying, you want to make sure that you glue everything all the way up to the edges if you will not be sewing, because you want to make sure that it's not gonna it's not going to like unglue itself You want to make sure it's very well adhered, and you also want to make sure that you spread your glue as evenly as possible, because if you do not, you will have like air bubbles come up on the fabric, and we don't really want that. I'm a strong believer that in this craft we can we don't really make mistakes. We just challenge ourselves a little bit more to try and figure out how to accommodate for anything that doesn't go to plan. So if you didn't glue super duper well and you were going to stitch around this entire cover like I did, around those bubbles, you could probably like stitch around them and like try and press them down with the stitches. But if you're not doing that, then, and things like air bubbles and things like that really bother you, then you definitely want to be sure that you know, adhere everything super duper well with a layer of even glue, an even layer of glue, and but also being conscious that depending on the glue that you use, it could seep. So you want to make sure that it's a thin, even layer. You don't want it to seep and like stain your fabric on the outside. Of course, if that did happen, what you could do is, just cluster over it. Not cluster, like layer over it. Add like a patchwork or something like that. And it doesn't have to be like fabric patchwork. It could be like paper patchwork. And in this video, I don't show you guys, but I do have some other journals that I made that I did do like paper and fabric patchwork over. So, that's always an option if your glue does seep through your fabric. And if it's in a more inconspicuous, I guess is a word, area where it's harder to hide. Is that the right word? I don't know. Where it's harder to hide, like the spine, you could always add lace or patchwork. So here I'm just showing you guys how I'm creating like angled slits. Because I want to use part of the fabric for pockets, I had to think about it really hard how I was going to go at it. So I did cut these slits at an inner, like on an inner angle, so that I could glue that fabric down, without it interfering with, without cutting the corners like you usually would to wrap fabric around a journal cover, because then that would leave me with uneven pockets, and I didn't want that. So I'm only going to glue the top and the bottom pieces of fabric down. And if you're going to sew around the entire journal cover like I did, then what you have to do is you will need to not be very conscious that your side pieces of fabric are still loose, and make sure that they don't get caught when you're sewing around the entire journal cover, because you want to sew you want the side panels to be sewn down when you sew around the entire journal cover, not while you're sewing like over the front and the back and the spine and all of that. So here you will see me you will see me cut like excess fabric off, but it will not be, I will still leave a little bit of excess because I'm not great at cutting straight, and I didn't want to make a mistake where my fabric would be too short and not cover in a way that I wanted it to. So right now you'll see that I'm, like I said, you'll see that I'm covering, like I'm cutting, leaving an excess. And I will cut that excess off after those pockets are sewn down. I will just be very careful not to cut the fabric. So that's how the pockets will look. And this is how they will like, but like I said, I'm going to sew around the entire journal, like the front and the back cover. I'm just going to do some really messy stitching. And then after I do that, I will glue my pieces of cardstock down. Well, you could do it two ways. You could glue your fabric spine, your piece of fabric for the spine, down, and then your pieces of cardstock, and then sew around the entire journal after you clipped the pieces, like your pockets. Or you could after you've done your messy stitching, you could glue your pieces of cardstock and then glue the piece of fabric that you want to cover the spine, which is what I did for that one. And then clip down those side panels for the pockets and sew around the entire journal. So yeah, I don't think I'm explaining it as well as I would like, but I hope it makes sense. I'll try to explain it a little bit more when we go. Once I show you the journal in its completed form, I think you'll understand maybe a little bit better what I'm trying to say. And here you'll see me like trying to figure out how I want to do it. So this is a great way to you want to put your piece of fabric down on the table face down, and then put your cardstock, your chipboard, whatever it is, base on top of it, just to make sure you have sufficient hangover of fabric to wrap around the journal cover. This journal will also have pockets, but they will be different, not like the fabric pockets on the other one. I had a lot of fun making these. They're pretty easy and quick to make. I think they would be great for like maybe not December daily, because December has 30 days. Well, I guess they could, you could add sufficient amount of paper and for like a month, and just make sure you add a closure to avoid alligator mouth. I'm pretty sure I've shown, or maybe I haven't, but I'm pretty sure I have shown in this in another video a journal I bought from my friend Leah, or well, that I got from Patreon from Leah from Thrifty Day. And she had this like lace band that would work as a closure, so that could work really well for these types of journals, to keep them closed and to avoid that alligator mouth. So here you'll see me snipping off those corners. So this is what I meant on the other journal, where I cut at an inner angle instead of just cutting off the corners, because if I would have cut it down like this, then my pockets would not have been perfectly squared, and I didn't want that, because that would be a whole lot harder to sew down. And yes, I could have glued it down, but I opted not to do that. I guess I don't want to say I was lazy. I just felt like it was a lot easier to just sew those pockets in and make sure they were shut when I sewed around the entirety of the journal. Like around the journal, not inside, like not on the front and back cover, but around the edges, to make sure that fabric is fully adhered as well. When I glue down fabric like this, like on the inside of a journal, I will typically also glue, like I won't mind if my glue spreads onto the fabric as well, because here I really want it to be really well adhered, especially if you don't sew. You want it to be super duper well adhered, and I don't mind if there's a seepage of glue on the fabric on the inside, because I'm going to cover that up anyways. Usually I will cover it up with like either cardstock, which is the inner lining of my journal, or another piece of fabric, so it won't be like noticeable, but I will be reassured that my journal is completely stuck down, like my fabric is stuck down. And sorry, you could hear cars. I'm in my living room because this is where my craft area is. And so yeah, so here you'll see me working trying really hard to get those corners perfectly fleshed, but I've never really been great at that, and this is where metal corners are really good, because they will not only hide that, but they will protect those corners really well. You just want to be sure that if you do, I won't show it in this video, but I will. I haven't finished these journals yet, but I will be adding metal corners. I'm so sorry if you can hear that. There's like people going around in four-wheelers. Anyway, so yeah, you could when I do add these metal corners, I will more than likely add glue as well to the corners, and then place the metal corner on it and press it down. Um, just because I want to make sure they're not going anywhere. So yeah, here, let's see, I believe, yeah, so there's me signaling that I'm going to go and stitch around everything. And here I'm just showing you, like, this one has already been completed. I've done my messy stitching. You can't see it super well, but it's there. And then, like I said, I did my messy stitching first, and I added my panels, and then my fabric spine piece, and then I sewed around the entire journal and shut those pockets down. There I'm just pointing out how there was seepage of glue, and you can see it. I'm not too worried because that in that crevice is exactly where my signature will be sewn in, so you won't be able to see it. But definitely if it's like a 1, 2, 3-inch spine and you're gonna have multiple multiple signatures, you just want to be conscious that if there is glue seepage, there is a chance that it will be visible between, like, you know how if you have multiple signatures, sometimes they have gaps. There's a possibility that you'll be able to see that glue. Of course, like I said, there's remedies. You could always add lace, and that'll cover it up a whole lot. So there's that option. So you did see a light change, and it's because I realized that it was super dark and I had to get a different light. So here I'm showing you how, depending on the thread that you use, your sewing machine might not like it. Mine does not like that particular thread. It always bunches it up and I hate it. It's by the brand Americana. It's a very, like, it almost feels plasticky. And my sewing machine, if I like try speeding up, it'll do that. I don't mind it too much because, okay, so give me one second. So here I'm kind of showing you that I will be doing, that I did 2 different types of spines. Because the first journal has the fabric piece for the spine on top of my cardstock, because I added it after I glued my cardstock down. And here I will be gluing down my piece of fabric for the spine first, and then I will glue my cardstock pieces down afterwards. And this is because I couldn't find a piece of fabric that I liked enough, and I have these strips of Christmas fabric that I bought like last year, and they're not long enough, but they will work well enough because it's only one signature. So it'll work well enough that it'll add reinforcement to where that signature has to be sewn in. And here you'll just see me looking through all of these fabric strips, trying to pick one that matches with that hangover, that fabric that I folded over and glued down. I don't want it to look super out of place. But yes, so as I was saying about the thread, yeah, you just want to be conscious of that. I don't mind too much all the bunching up because I will be, even if it's not super well secured, I will be adding glue, so that will keep it in place and my stitches will not come undone. Definitely, if it bothers you, you could always just, remove the stitches wherever that bunching up started, and then, stitch again. Like, that's not really, and I've done it as, sometimes you run out of thread, so you have to stitch over, just, it is what it is. So here, like I said, you'll see me picking all my different, trying to decrease my choices, deciding which one I'm gonna use, and trying to figure it out, because I think in the end I choose a white piece of fabric with mistletoes. Yeah, I believe Yes, it was a white piece of fabric with mistletoes. Um, and I will, and you'll see it, I'll demonstrate right now. I will not only just sew around the entire journal to make sure that fabric is stuck on as well as those cardstock panels, but I sew down the middle. Well, not down the middle, but near the spine, where the cardstock panel ends near the spine to make sure that it won't lift later on because it's just glued down. And because of all the fat, like the thread and all of that, I want to make sure that it's not going anywhere. And I'll show you guys right now. So to avoid, like I said, the glue seepage, you definitely, and in this particular journal, you'll see me do a way better job of spreading my glue around to make sure I don't have that weird look of glue seeping through the fabric that I had on the first one. Um, but because what ended up happening with the first one was that I added the glue, but in the crevice between the cardstock panels, I did not spread it so well, so it ended up seeping out when I added the after the fabric was like glued on there. Um, And like I said, I'm not super worried about spreading my glue because I will be sewing, but if you're definitely not going to sew, then you want to make sure that your glue is all the way up to the edges, those corners, every part of that piece of cardstock, because you want to make sure it doesn't come off. Um, and I'm not too worried about warping, if and because it's cardstock, so even if it's PVA glue, it doesn't warp too bad. If anything, what you might see is the back of the thread from all my stitching. That's probably the only bulking that will be visible from these pieces of cardstock once they're stuck down. But yes. So here I'm just gluing those down, trying to line them up as best as I can, because that can be kind of hard sometimes. And you know, trying to make sure that I leave enough of a space so that it won't interfere with the folding of my journal. It was a little bit trickier with the first journal because I cut those panels very to size, so I had to like spread them out a little bit more. But these were cut a little bit smaller, so I didn't have that issue. And the journal folded really well. So here, I believe, yeah. So yes, so this is what I'm talking about. I'm going to show you guys. So I'm going to sew not only all over the cover, but around it and down the middle as well. Because I want to, and I did it on this one as well. You can't tell super well, but I sewed around it and I sewed down the middle where that fabric ends because I didn't want it to be lifting. And I wanted to make sure my cardstock panels were, you know, glued down really well. Here you'll see me deciding that I want to add pockets to this one as well. And at first I thought about using the leftover pieces from the cardstock I used for the first journal. And in the end I'll change my mind. And so because I changed my mind, I ended up using those pieces of cardstock that you saw me put to the side. They are Stamperia. They are cards from a Stamperia paper pad. I don't remember the name, but it's a Christmas one. And like a blue Christmas one with an angel. But as you can see, they are shorter, so they don't end up becoming pockets, more like tuck spots. And since I will be sewing down the middle, you will see me clip them on, but because because I will be sewing near the spine, I decided when I was sewing, I unclipped them. After I finished doing my messy sewing, well, no, I already did that. So after when I'm taking it to the sewing machine, I unclip them and I sew down the middle first, near the spine first for each panel on each side of the spine. I sewed down there first, and then I clip them back on and sew around the entire journal, to avoid shutting them completely, because I wanted them to be more like tuck spots rather than pockets. So here you'll see me saying it backwards, but then I kind of realize that I can't do that. So I say, I'm pointing out that I'm going to sew down the middle first and then I'll sew around it. And there you can see it where I sewed around it. I mean, I sewed on the middle first and then around it. And, there's a back. I added that ruffle. So yeah, I hope you guys, it was helpful and you learned something, and let me know what you think. I really like these journals. So thank you. And